Well, it all comes down to this. 3 drivers, 1 championship, and a 12-point deficit going into Abu Dhabi. 2021, anybody? Oh no, Michael Massey's not here. Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is Tom Downey, and today we are going to review the 2025 Qatar Grand Prix, and later on we'll be previewing the 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Joining me today, we have my good friend and co-host, Mr. Jawad Yaqub.
Hello, everyone. You don't have Michael Massey here, but you got 2 Aussies with you, so get ready.
Oh, yes, we do, because I am very pleased to say we're joined by special guest and friend of the show, Mr. Ben Waterworh.
Oh, I have friends. It feels nice. Thank you very much for the invite, Tom. Great to be here. And Jawad, you're looking a beautiful, beautiful specimen as always. So good to see your face tonight as well.
Well, thank you very much for being here, Ben, and thank you for coming on at short notice. Just before we get into this show, I do need to say a big thank you to Green Wheels India for sponsoring this episode of Grid Talk. Green Wheels offers a range of high-quality electric scooters and rickshaws designed for a sustainable future. From sleek scooters ideal for city commutes to robust e-rickshaws for passengers and cargo transport, they have solutions for every need. They partner with top manufacturers who share their commitment to both innovation and quality. Head to greenwheels.in to check them out. Right, chaps, let's get into the Qatar review first. Wasn't a classic. It was a bit of a slow burn. And then we have one main talking point to discuss. So, Jawad, I'll come straight to you. That McLaren blunder. They decided not to pit behind the safety car after 7 laps of a 57-lap race when every team knew that tyres were mandated to do a maximum of 25 laps across all sessions. Was that a blunder? Was that dropping the ball? Was that Ferrari in disguise? What on earth did they do?
I say it was all of the above, to be honest. We've questioned all season McLaren's strategic decision-making and, kind of that operational sharpness that we've made fun of Ferrari for many years and their poor decision-making. And, we're one race away from the end of the season and a potential world championship for both of their drivers, one of both of their drivers, given the mathematics of it all. And we see absolute blunders like this. My question is, and I'm sure, many out there will be thinking as to why didn't they at least try pitting one of the cars under that safety car if they didn't want to risk both? I can understand that, both cars running in tandem would have, fallen afoul of double stacking. We saw, the likes of Russell and Leclerc fall victim to, the congestion in the pit lane. So at least bring in one of the cars and try something different. That's something we haven't seen a lot of from McLaren this year, all in the name of fairness. And, he has that, so the other driver has to have the same thing. Your girlfriend split up with you, so by fairness, your girlfriend should split up with you too. I'm just using hyperbole here. It's very much warranted. But yeah, try something different, and at least, you could have one winner or loser instead of both of them ultimately being losers at the end of the day. For Piastri, what a weekend he had had. After how many races that he hasn't been on the podium, it feels like a lifetime ago since he was last, a winner in F1. So to see him stitch together a near perfect weekend, or bugger it, I'm going to say it was a perfect weekend, right until the pit wall made the decisions that ruined his race and ultimately has seen him slip to 3rd in the championship as well, behind Max Verstappen, who was brilliant and may as well take the championship from them, because that's what Zach Brown and Andreas Stella said, is they were like, well, we'd rather, a repeat of 2007 happen than, compromise any one of our drivers.
And that's certainly what it feels like they're doing. It absolutely feels like they're doing their utmost to give the championship to Max, which, I'm not complaining about, as we all know. I am a Max fan first and foremost. But Ben, the same question to you, mate. This McLaren strategy call, which we shall phrase it, was not their best option, wasn't their smartest move, and once again they just appear to have blundered, and as Jawad just said, they seem to be handing the championship to Max at this rate. What's your take on the whole not pitting behind the safety car incident, if you want to call it that, from yesterday?
I just want to quickly clarify that as a new token Ferrari fan on this podcast, I believe McLaren are definitely the new Ferrari. They've shown that now in 2 years, so standing up for my beloved team. But look, I I think there's a few ways to look at this. Yes, it was an error. We're sitting here now, we're talking about it. It was an absolute error. McLaren have admitted that. That's the simple way of looking at it. But I think in hindsight, they took a risk, they took a gamble. It could have worked out. If it had worked out and it was the opposite of what happened, then we'd be talking here it was a genius strategy. Ultimately, it didn't. I think had they not been in this position in the championship, they wouldn't have done it. They would have definitely risked it a little bit more. I mean, obviously, Verstappen did it. Nothing to lose. Why not? Let's give it a crack. And ultimately, too, being the lead team, as Andrea Stella said after the race, we weren't expecting everyone else to pit afterwards. So, there's a few ways of looking at that. But I think, the biggest takeout, and I think Jawad said it perfectly there, is why wouldn't you at least try it with one? And it's hard not to believe that had Lando been in front, that maybe they would have. I don't know. I'm not here to be the Aussie and to play into that side of things. I just feel that, given the championship standings, that's where I'm looking at it more so than, trying to play a different level of bias. It's just, to me, and I'm not a McLaren fan. I've never been a McLaren fan, but it's always been a frustration for me watching this team of how they operate their drivers. And this isn't the first time in McLaren's history that they've obviously just gone, we'll let them race. We're not going to favour one over the other. I'm a Michael Schumacher fan. I grew up watching one driver being given precedence to win and have somebody back him up. And if I am to look at history of Formula One, to me, that is the way to go. But yeah, it's frustrating to see this happen on a level that, they absolutely shot themselves in the foot, and they did not even try it with one driver. Even if they pitted Lando and Oscar was the one who missed out, at least they still tried something and got there, and they'd still have won the Grand Prix, no doubt. And I think the other thing to look at it too, which is kind of maybe the more baffling situation about why they didn't, is Lusail is a circuit which all weekend people have talked about how hard it is to overtake at. It's never been a circuit that's good for overtaking. So yes, they might have thought they had the pace, but in no way did they show enough pace to pull away completely to have it. I mean, they were struggling to keep ahead of Alonso. I mean, Norris barely came out ahead of Alonso after the first stop, and then ultimately he didn't come out behind Antonelli and Sainz, and he couldn't get past him. He could only got past Antonelli because he made a mistake. So, questions, and I think that clip on that podcast of Stella and Brown saying, we would rather what happened in 2007 happen again versus not letting our drivers race. Well, Sky Sports replayed that last night as kind of a reminder. That'll be something that'll be played to death if Verstappen wins this weekend. It's so interesting hearing Stella talk about that after the race, going like, there's history. We've seen it before, 2007. He was with Ferrari in 2007, so of course he's going to probably remember that a little bit more fondly in 2007 because he wasn't with McLaren. So, it's an interesting situation that we find ourselves in right now. And look, it's hard not to look at Max as the guy to beat this weekend, isn't it? Like, after everything that's happened and the form he's in, he's so chilled and just relaxed, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting, and that's a very good point, and there are shades of 2007, but it's obviously not quite as sort of linear or comparative as it was to that infamous title fight. And I'm just looking forward to seeing it all unfold in 6 days' time. I think it's going to be absolute cinema, whatever happens. But I do want to touch upon Ferrari quickly as well. So I'll come to you again first, Jawad. Another tough weekend in what has just been a season to forget. Obviously, they signed Hamilton, and it does appear that dream has turned into somewhat of a nightmare for him. Leclerc rescued some points for the team, but again, he only got 2 points in the main race, and I can't remember where he finished in the sprint off the top of my head. Hamilton didn't get any points again this weekend. Just another season of abject misery for the Maranello team, especially after last year where they had, I believe, 5 race wins in the season across their 2 drivers. And of course, the driver that they effectively moved out of the way for Hamilton to come in is finished on the podium again. So just another tough weekend. And where does it go from here for Ferrari?
Into a hopefully reflective and transformative off-season is all I can say. I don't expect them to do anything in Abu Dhabi off the back of the form we saw in Qatar. I don't think their drivers particularly care about Abu Dhabi either. And to answer your question of where Leclerc was after the sprint, he was P13. So went backwards there, and Lewis Hamilton suffering the indignity of, not only another SQ1 elimination, but then a Q1 elimination in qualifying too. So cumulatively, you look at it as 3 in a row now if you include Vegas. I don't think he's had that many Q1 eliminations in his career before, sprint or Grand Prix, consecutively, I should say. So it is rather, demoralizing watching this, I guess, driver who is statistically the greatest of all time within, 3 years or 4 years of winning that 7th championship or being in contention for that 8th, be, squalling at the bottom of the grid. And for a team as famous as Ferrari, it's just, devastating to see. And Leclerc as well, who's mired with that team. I think there was a statistic that said they're on track for their 4th winless season in the last seven seasons, which, is, it's pretty alarming. And we've said it before on the show that, as bad as even McLaren's, slump was in the 2010s when they went to Honda power, they've still managed to win more Grand Prix in that time up until now than Ferrari have. And Ferrari have been, regularly up there fighting for 2nd or 3rd in the championship, if not the Constructors' Championship itself. So it's really disappointing to see. I'm sure Ben's going to have more to say about that, dressed in the scarlet red of the prancing horse. So I'll pass it on over to him then.
Yeah, look, not many people will get this analogy, but I'm a Carlton supporter, so I'm used to pain. But look, it's the thing that I find the most difficult to watch of this year, and Jawad, you touched on it, is just the mood of the drivers. I get you have bad seasons, I understand that, but I don't think I've ever seen a pair of drivers just so despondent and just so dejected. And I think that does come off the back of last season. Let's not forget this time a year ago, they were within how many points of McLaren going into the final round to win the Constructors' Championship? Like, it was close. It wasn't, as far away as some people seem to remember. And here we are now, one race away from them having another winless season. You touched on that, Jawad, the amount they've had. I mean, prior to the last couple, I think this would be their 3rd or 4th in the last 7 years. You had to go back to 2014 as the only one this century that they had not won a Grand Prix at. Even on their off years, they would still get a victory here and there, right? So they didn't have a period as long as McLaren without a win. So, they were still there and thereabouts. To sign Lewis Hamilton, this is obviously a big deal. As you said, Jawad, statistically the greatest driver in Formula One. Many people compared this to when Schumacher signed, but the big difference is that Schumacher didn't join Ferrari as statistically the most successful. He got his success from his Benetton days and built on it, whereas Hamilton comes into this already with that legacy. And it's only been a season. I think it's way too early to kind of, call Hamilton at Ferrari a failure. We could be here in 12 months' time. He's swept all before him and, all is forgotten of this year. But if this continues, he's on the path of Alonso and Vettel, as you would argue, these big signings that just ultimately didn't live up to the hype. I just want them both to go home after this round, have a good Christmas, spend time with their families, eat and be merry, and then come back next year with a smile on their face, because, Charles always a bit of a guy who's always a bit down on himself, but he sort of does it with a bit of a smile. He's not really doing it with a smile all of a sudden. And to hear Hamilton basically just fob every interview off and then say like, oh yeah, the weather's nice. It's very hard. It's very hard to see that. So yeah, I think that they've got a lot of thinking to do. Obviously the regulation change is going to hopefully bring a change in their fortunes. It's been one season of misery, and hopefully it'll be a season that, in a couple of months' time we can go, well, that was a blip, and look where they're back up to. But being a Ferrari fan, not that hopeful that it's going to change that quickly, sadly.
No, I think for Ferrari it's going to be a tough transition period, shall we say. And I think if Hamilton really wants to see off his career, he just needs to go to Aston Martin for 2 years, and then he'll really be in the doldrums, and then he can call it a day, just as Vettel and Alonso. So we mentioned, obviously, that Ferrari moved aside someone, is one way of putting it, to bring in Hamilton, which, I mean, if a 7-time champ says, I want to drive for you, who are you going to be to say no? They moved aside Carlos Sainz, who, at the start of this season, told his fans that there wouldn't be any podiums. He told them that it wouldn't be a very good season. And yet here we are. He's got his second Grand Prix podium of the season. And he's also had at least one podium in the sprint, I believe, in Qatar, but second full podium, we'll call it. And he's also helped to secure P5 for Williams in the Constructors, which, if you'd have told us that after the first race of the season, where he was doing his best Madonna impression of spinning round. No, that's Kylie, sorry. I've got two Aussies on the show. I really should get that right as well. Wow. That's embarrassing. Wow. Okay, There we are. I know. That one's staying in. After his pirouette, should we say, in Australia, where he went round on one of the opening laps, a few of us, myself included, were sort of thinking it's going to be a tough year for Carlos, and it certainly was not an easy start. But as his teammate has fallen off a bit, Sainz has just gone from strength to strength in that Williams, and he secured his second podium of the season, and he secured P5 in the Constructors for Williams, which a couple of years ago, Jawad, was absolutely not on the cards when Williams were absolutely in the doldrums. Nowhere. They had the likes of Latifi and then Sargent driving for them. Yes, they had George Russell, obviously. But they were just absolutely nowhere. And now, Sainz has gone in. He's brought the experience from big teams that he's been at, because obviously he's been at McLaren, he's been in the Red Bull Junior program, obviously he's been at Ferrari, he was at Renault when they weren't completely imploding with the sort of spectacular fashion they are these days. And yeah, just, how do you sort of see this for Sainz, this whole move, and obviously his second podium of the season?
I think it's nothing short of vindication. Earlier in the season, I'm sure there was a lot of questions that were being asked with the form that Sainz was in, and he was kind of the despondent character, it seemed, while his teammate Alex Albon, it was almost like Albon was being put forward as this he's been the sleeper for so many years because he's had teammates like Latifi and Sargent that weren't quite up to his standards, but it's taken him half a season to get his groove on, and now very much the smooth operator is hitting his stride. I said, I think a couple of shows ago, that Williams, obviously not needing to, or not having brought many more developments to their car this season, any result they get is a bonus, and they're all very much building towards 2026. And I think for the team morale and what James Vowles is doing as a whole, I think these podiums are just a bonus, and they're only going to incentivize and energize the team even further heading into the next season. When was the last time Williams had two, more than one podium in the season? 2017, exactly. It's also
16.
Lance Stroll was on the podium that year.
I'm just glad you brought that up so you could bring up Lance on the podium. But
so we get the Lance Stroll reference in there. Yeah, so it's been a great year. It's been great to see Sainz, rebound, I guess, after many thought that his career was going to be done, having left Ferrari and moving over to Williams. But he's done quite well for himself. And yeah, fifth, as you say, is secured in the Constructors' Championship as well for the once great Williams team.
Absolutely. And it's a name that is seeped in history and all the rest of it in F1. Obviously, if you talk about the 90s, you can't talk about F1 in the 90s without talking about Williams. My favorite ever F1 car, the FW14B, which is just, for me, iconic. The livery, the sound, everything about that car. So Williams is one of those where they are just synonymous with the sport, and for me, it's only good to see them back up. Ben, same thing to you again. Obviously, Williams, one of their strongest seasons for possibly the last, 7-8 years, we could potentially say, because 2018 onwards was just a pretty sort of bad downward slump. So what do you sort of think about Williams coming back and being this sort of genuine midfield team again?
To correct your reference before, I guess we're a bit hung up right now on Williams and how they're going well. They had to get a Madonna reference in there, let's be honest. Yeah, it's great. As you were saying there, I sort of got into Formula One in the 90s when I was very young, and Williams were winning. It's sort of, a lot of people now probably think that sounds weird, but yeah, what did we watch when we were growing up? Williams, McLaren, Ferrari, they were the teams that were winning. So, if you had have said to me, 20, 30 years ago that Williams are going to be a midfield to rear end the pack field, I would have been like, you're joking, right? But it's an incredible turnaround, because at the beginning of the season, I remember, prior to my current role in another role was writing an opinion piece. And I think after about 4 or 5 rounds, I'm like, yeah, Carlos, like no one's talking about this, but he's not doing well. This is not working out for him. He was really struggling at the early part of the season, and Albon was just Mr. Consistent. He was doing what Albon does and just going through it. You look at the last 7 races, Albon has not scored points since Italy. And in that same period, Carlos has gotten his 2.5 podiums, obviously with the sprint podium, and a 10th and a 5th. It's crazy how much he's turned it around. But just speaking of turning around, Joe, you mentioned James Vowles. I was critical of James Vowles at the beginning. I thought there were some moments when he got into Williams that he really hadn't handled it well. I thought Australia in 2024 with the whole scenario around Albon crashing and having to give up the seat to Sargent and all that kind of stuff that happened, I thought that was handled poorly at the time. And I really wasn't sold on James, but now I think it's the opposite. He's just completely steered that ship into a position now where we're at. They've been so focused on the regulation change, and they've all but said this season's a complete write-off. But here they are with multiple podiums now. Like it's crazy to think. And Carlos is just, he's given a real middle finger to Ferrari in a way, isn't he? Because you had said at the beginning of this season that Lewis Hamilton in the penultimate round of the season had not scored a podium and Carlos Sainz had scored 2. I don't think anybody would have believed you. So, yeah, it's a great result. I love seeing how happy he was. And, he basically said, look, we thought this was going to be the worst track for us all season, and here we are on the podium. It's amazing to see. So, yeah, I hope it continues. As a Ferrari fan, you don't like the teams that are beating you. Obviously, that's why I've never been a massive McLaren fan. But Williams, to be fair, has never been a team that I really had anything against because, they were sort of, from the bootstraps pulling their way up and sort of always being that team like that. So I think Williams getting back to the front of Formula One would be a very good thing. I think it would be even better than McLaren's return, not to take away from McLaren's success in the last couple of years, and great to see that they are back at the field. I love these sort of old school traditional teams being at the front where I feel they belong, but I think Williams doing it would be an even better story. And imagine if Carlos Sainz wins a Grand Prix for Williams before Lewis Hamilton wins a Grand Prix for Ferrari. I mean, wow, that's a big smooth operation there with a full stop.
Yeah, it really was. It was such a good performance from Sainz again. I really like Sainz. I really rate him. And it was really good for me to see him back up on that podium. Just looked like he was enjoying himself. Because I think when he had his last win for Ferrari, he probably thought, when am I going to get to stand on this podium again? But no, absolute 10 out of 10 performance from Carlos Sainz yesterday. And if you think this show deserves a 10 out of 10, or if you divide it by 2, a 5-star rating, please be sure to leave us one on Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal Pocket Cast, wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a rating, drop us a subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and let us know what you think about this show. Right, that's Qatar review done. Let's move ahead and look to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So there's only one place we're going to start with this. Obviously, it's this coming weekend. Jawad, it's a 3-way title fight. There's a 12-point swing between Lando, who is 12 points ahead of Max. Lando needs to finish 3rd, and he is champion. Max obviously needs to outscore him by 12 points, and he is champion. And then Oscar is still firmly in the title fight again. Let's just go straight in with it. How do you think it's going to go?
I honestly have no clue, and I'm trying to do the mental arithmetic and everything. I think it's just been as predictable as some of McLaren's, strategic chaos has been this season. I feel like, there's probably one more card left to play, and we'll see it in Abu Dhabi. Like, the cynic in me thinks that, there'll be a situation where, because Piastri is behind Verstappen in the championship now, McLaren are going to see this as firmly between Max and Lando, and that a situation arises where they need to compromise Oscar's race to benefit their driver winning the championship, which would go against the mantra of, keeping things fair for both their drivers, which I honestly think, if it was fair at all in the beginning, we would have seen some, like Austin and Singapore and stuff like that. It's since Monza, it's just been absolute, the optics has been awful for them. And I'm sure there's people out there who would deny that and use all sorts of shreds of evidence to suggest no, but the optics have been terrible. I don't know what's going to happen. I might need a welfare check afterwards, because it's just been one of those seasons and championship races. The only thing I will say, though, and I'm going to use Ben's stat here is that, the last time we went into a championship decider with a Red Bull driver 24 points down, I think it was, with 2 races to go, the third place driver, which was Vettel in 2010 and was Verstappen, went on to win the championship. So I don't know if that's an omen or not, but, we'll just wait and see.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you'd have asked us maybe after Brazil or Mexico, we'd say, well, it does appear that Lando has this in the bag. But now, here we are, like we said, McLaren doing their utmost to take it away from everybody. And yeah, I mean, but of course, it's only fair and, fair and flexible. Those are the words that McLaren seem to be using. But Ben, obviously, same question to you, my friend. 3 drivers, a 3-way title fight, a 12-point deficit. How do you foresee it going?
I see this going, I think it's 2007 is the one that it's more shades of than 2010 for obvious reasons on one side. But if I'm not mistaken, I seem to remember Lewis Hamilton that weekend only needing a podium to win the championship. And looking at the standings, that would be correct. I think maybe if Alonso had a 1, he probably would want to count back. But I think there was sort of like a minimum requirement, at least second, maybe third. And obviously, if you remember Brazil 2007, how that, he was basically done on the first lap and then it was all ahead of him. And then, obviously Massa helping Raikkonen win that race. And 2 McLaren drivers then shot themselves in the foot. If I am a betting man, I'm not a betting man. But to me, there's something just in the waters about Max Verstappen with this. Like it's this storybook finish that just seems to just be coming and coming and coming. And the thing that really sells it for me in terms of just this final round is look at the body language of each of the drivers and how they're reacting to interviews. Oscar is Oscar. He never shows his emotions, and when he does, it's very obvious. Saying on the radio afterwards how he was speechless, saying what he said in the races. He does his best to remain Oscar, but you can tell he's just not happy. Lando is almost snappy and rude with media now, something that I've never really seen with Lando, just the way he answers questions now. He tries to put it off with a smile and be very Lando Norris, but he's sort of getting a bit snappy more so than usual, whereas Max, there was that interview where they were basically like, oh, what would it mean to you if you were to win a 5th championship? He's just like, whatever. Like, if it happens, great. If not, then I'm not going to lose any sleep on it. Cool. He's just chilling. He's just so relaxed. And I think a lot of that is also Red Bull mind games. We know how much they like to play them. And I think it's really affecting McLaren. So there's something about this year that I just feel that Max Verstappen has got something special. And to me, if he does it, this is by far the greatest comeback we've ever seen in Formula One history for him to do it. And one could argue maybe the greatest championship winning year ever we've seen in Formula One. I mean, the guy was 104 points down. 104 points. That's 4 race wins behind Oscar Piastri after the Dutch Grand Prix. Now he's 4 points ahead of him. Absolutely insane turnaround. So I just got a sneaky feeling Max can do it. And I hate saying that as an Australian because I would love to see nothing more than Oscar win this championship. Of course I would. I'm Australian. I'm a proud Australian. I'm not going to deny that. But I just feel Max is going to do it. I just feel something's going to happen this weekend and Max will be the one smiling in 7 days' time.
I'm inclined to agree with you, to be honest. I can see Max doing it and he is just so calm. He's been in this situation before. He has 4 championships. And I also agree with you that if he was to do it, it would be the most incredible championship sort of trophy snatch that I think we would have ever seen. It will be one for the ages, and I, for one, cannot wait. But there is more that's going on this weekend at Abu Dhabi. There is another title, well, not a title fight, sorry. There is another battle going on. It's actually not a title fight because McLaren sold out the constructors in, I think, about round 4 this year. Red Bull, well, Team Max versus Ferrari. There is a 44-point gap. Is that an ominous sign? Between Team Verstappen Racing, also known as Red Bull Racing, and Ferrari. Jawad, do you think that Ferrari can make any sort of dent on this gap as between themselves and Red Bull, or do you think they're just resigned to being 4th in the constructors this year?
Can I just jump in and say that doesn't that make them, they can't actually overturn that though. They are locked in 4th because you cannot overturn a 44-point gap. Just to be the math guy on the pod, if you win, you get 25 plus 18. That's 43. So they cannot overturn that.
He's
You were absolutely right. They can't
there we
overturn
go.
it. So
Answer to my question. So
Sorry
Ferrari,
to come on the pod for the first time, and I'm not good at math, but as a Ferrari fan, we know when we're fourth. So
I think it's typical Ferrari. They've shot themselves in the foot before even heading out on the racetrack in Yas Marina. So yeah, they're not going to do it. They're fourth.
yeah, but I mean, I
Red
guess
Bull can overtake Mercedes though. So
yeah. Well, I guess that answers that one for us then, doesn't it? It's
I'm never invited back again.
Oh no, it could quite the opposite. No, it's yeah. Well, I mean, in that case, then we talked about it already, but Ferrari, obviously we talked about where do they go, but then let's rephrase that one slightly. Red Bull, they could catch Mercedes. They would need 2 compliant drivers, which has been an issue since, I would argue, midway through 2022. There's been an issue for Red Bull, obviously, with Checo and then the others who've been in that second seat. If Mercedes have a decent weekend, do you think there's any chance of Red Bull sort of catching them and sort of being there, or do you think that Red Bull are sort of locked in for third at the minute with Mercedes in second?
They're locked in for third, and it pains me to say, given how much chance and opportunities I wanted to give Yuki Tsunoda this year, I think it's all but confirmed that he's going to be out at the end of the year. So, what's there for him to play for anyway if that announcement comes ahead of this weekend's race? Because he's not going to be in the racing bulls, is he, this time? So he'll just go out and do whatever he wants, and whether it benefits Red Bull or not, who knows. Mercedes, on the other hand, they've been strong, and it's high praise to how Kimi Antonelli has found form later in the year, and really turned Mercedes into a 2-car team with both cars delivering week in, week out. Something that they kind of struggled to do even at the end of last year with Hamilton in the other car. So I'm more kind of intrigued as to whether Antonelli will overcome, I think it's like a 3 or 4 point gap to Hamilton in sixth in the drivers' championship. Whether Antonelli can achieve a 6th place finish this year, that would be quite incredible ahead of the driver he replaced.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we talked about this second seat issue for Red Bull? And once again, it may be coming around to bite them in the backside. So, Ben, again, same question to you. Can Red Bull take second in the constructors? Or do you think that the Mercedes pair versus, let's be real, the single driver of Red Bull is going to do anything?
Simple answer is no. Red Bull will not do it because it comes down to that second seat. I mean, I've already seen the memes going around on social media where they've got a picture of Yuki, Liam and Isaac sort of with their soldier hats on, and it's like, come on, boys, you're ready, do it for Max. So, yeah, look, you need an utter miracle for it to happen, and I think there's more chance of Oscar Piastri winning the championship than that's going to happen, and that's not to disparage Oscar's chances this weekend. But, yeah, I think the thing that always, impresses me with Mercedes is that they're just so consistent. They're kind of like what Red Bull were sort of in the late 2010s. They just hung around. Every now and then they'd pinch a win, solid podiums, and, be second and third, but, without really ever being a serious threat. And I think Antonelli has been very impressive in, the second half and the first bit. He had that drop off, obviously, in the middle. But to me, George Russell, he arguably, to me, is a top 3 driver this season. And I think he's impressed me so much this year without ever getting the credit that he deserves. He's always there. He's always there. He's always within a sniff. Doesn't matter. And he's obviously got a couple of wins. And he's just hanging around. And through that whole period when the contracts were being talked about and it took them so late, that was very interesting to me. And I think it shows that George is holding firm on his worth and, going everything along those lines. But yeah, I think Mercedes have got second in the bag. There's no question about that. Again, not a betting man, but I'd put my house on that, and I don't even own a house. But I think it'd be interesting if Antonelli wants to overtake Hamilton in the championship. There's only 2 points. He's only 2 points behind Hamilton. I mean, that's realistically probably going to happen based on what we've seen recently, isn't it? So, yeah, I think that it's all but confirmed that Hadjar's going up to Red Bull. Is that a good thing? Probably not. I mean, this time a year ago, we were talking about was the right decision to put Lawson in that car or Tsunoda. I think we all agree that, Tsunoda should have gotten that chance, and just look what's happened. It's very sad what's happened. My biggest thing that I would love to see, And as much as I love seeing Max's comeback this season and kind of where we're at, had things sort of remained where they were at before the summer break and, they just were not within a chance of things, I would have loved them to just go, Max, you go into Racing Bull so we can see if this is the car or if this is the driver, just to really see what he could do in that car and what the others could do in the Red Bull. So, yeah, Mercedes second. Congratulations, vice champions for 2025. And hopefully, if the rumours are true for Mercedes fans, then next year could be a very good year because obviously a lot of people are talking that they're the team who've got ahead of the regs next year. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about Mercedes being very strong next year, and I think it'll be good for the sport. Just as long as they're not as strong as they were in 2014, because come on, guys, that was taking the mick. I say that as a Red Bull fan who had that season in 2023, which is also taking the mick. So, it'd be nice if they're strong, but not too strong, so we can have a little bit of a competition. But, chaps, there is one final question, come elephant in the room. And Jawad, who comes to you first. Have McLaren bottled it?
Not going to sit on the fence here. Yes, I do think they've bottled it. All in the name of fairness. It sounds good in theory. Some people think that, they've done pretty well at managing it. I don't think so. It's just, you look at, what it's done to the demeanor of, one driver, if not both at times. It got to the stage where if they were going to have backed a driver to win this championship, they should have done it, earlier in the season. And by the time we saw Lando go on that incredible run after the mid-season break and the Zandvoort DNF, it felt a bit too late to kind of stab Oscar in the back and put the eggs in the Lando basket. But then, if you believe some people, they've been sabotaging one side of the garage anyway all season. So it's a tricky situation. I definitely think they could have managed things better this season. Perhaps, we were naive to think that, a team could have two drivers go in for the championship with an interloper such as Max included too. I mean, when we saw Hamilton and Rosberg, Senna, Prost go for it back in the day, they were the dominant team and they didn't even have, someone who was able to come in as Verstappen has. Do I think, McLaren have been the dominant team? At times, yeah, this season, but at times they've completely, kind of thrown that dominance down the toilet and let Max back into it. And, to quote what Max has said, the only reason he's still in this fight is because, others keep making too many mistakes. So, they've only got themselves to look at and analyze after the season if they end up losing it. So, yeah, and I think you could already start doing the postmortem that perhaps they have bottled it or allowed it to get to the stage where, as good as it is for the drama and the sport, I'm sure Drive to Survive the next season is going to be mega. It shouldn't have got to the stage where we've got three drivers or, an interloper as Verstappen is in the mathematical contention in the final race. It should have been just Lando and Oscar. Yeah,
I'm going to save my bet until we've heard from Ben. So Ben, same question to you. Have McLaren bottled it?
Simple answer, yes, they have. Even if they win the Drivers' Championship this year, they have to review what happened this year because going into the summer break, they'd lost like 3 races. I mean, I was writing articles about how they're on track to top 1988 as, their most dominant season. And yet here we are now talking about this situation. I fail to remember, at least in my lifetime, a season where drivers who are from the same team who are allowed to race have done it peacefully, or at least even if they've lasted a year, within a year or two, it falls apart. It just doesn't work. It just does not work in Formula One. This is impossible because even if you say, oh, it's all in fairness, ultimately one driver's going to lose. And what's Oscar going to say at the end of the day if this was purely fair? Oh, well, at least I lost to my teammate. If anything, you'd rather lose to your not teammate, someone else. So yeah, they've bottled it. They really have. And that's why, going back to my point, it's shades of 2007. With Alonso and Hamilton, this is done a little bit nicer. We don't have people blocking each other in the pits and handing off spy documents to other teams. So, maybe it's a little bit different. One of these drivers isn't going off to Renault next year. But yeah, even if Lando or Oscar wins the championship this weekend, on a level, they have bottled this because they were absolutely destroying the opposition this season. And the fact that Verstappen. I mean, let's also not forget they're all on 7 wins. Like, it's ridiculous to think that all 3 of them are on 7 wins this weekend. I mean, Max's 5 of his wins have come in the second after the summer break. You know, he'd won 2 races in the first 14, and now he's won 7 equal with them. So, yeah, they have to take a bit of a look at themselves in the mirror and kind of see, because it's particularly for McLaren fans, and I'm not a McLaren fan. It's 17 years since the Drivers' Championship. You know, that's a long time, and even then you got to go back to 99. So again, 1 Drivers' Championship in 25 years. You know, and they could potentially not have another one this weekend. So yeah, easy answer is yes, they've bottled it.
I'll be honest, I am inclined to agree. And I'm going to be a little bit biased because I am obviously a Max fan. And even if Max doesn't win it and Lando does win it, I still think they bottled it, because how strong McLaren have been this season. For them to get into the final race, allowing Max to take that many points out of them. And yes, there's a double DSQ and all the rest of it. But McLaren got the double DSQ because they ran the car too low. It's as simple as that. And you can't excuse that. So it's just, I mean, McLaren, all the talk about fairness, like you both said, and flexibility and papaya rules and all that nonsense. There's a reason teams like Red Bull and Mercedes and all the rest of it won so many of these drivers and constructors championships. It's because they are ruthless teams. They are teams that know how to win. Look how many times Mercedes told Bottas to get out of the way. Look how many times Red Bull told Perez and all the others to get out of the way. It's because when you have a driver who is capable of winning, you have to do what's right for them. And even look at Mercedes in 2014 to 2016. They let their drivers duke it out. And McLaren have obviously tried to avoid that kind of duking out. And in turn, it's just gone to absolute... it's gone to what we've seen, and it's just not a good look. So I just want to see how it's all going to unfold. I'm sure none of us can wait until the final race of the season. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be watching, and it's going to be interesting regardless. So let's look ahead to that then, and let's get some predictions. So Jawad, I'll come to you first, sir. If I can have your pole position, your podium, and your bold prediction, please.
Oi, on the spot here, mate.
Always.
Pole position, let's say Lando Norris. My podium, Max, Lando, and Oscar. Bold prediction. Bold prediction. The championship won't be decided until the final lap.
Oh. No, Michael, no.
I just said
I tell you what, I did see a meme which will upset a few Lewis Hamilton fans, of him basically, given the fact that he is a backmarker these days, he's basically going to morph into the new Latifi, and he'll be the one to trigger the safety car for the last lap dash. So yeah, all we need to do is see if Michael Massey's available and bring him back.
Yeah, let's maybe not incite rioting just yet. Let's wait until we've at least had the results through, shall we? Ben, same for you, please, my friend. What is your pole prediction, your podium, and your bold prediction?
I'm just going to go full out. Max is going to be on pole. I think McLaren is going to play it, particularly Lando is going to play it conservative. I just feel he's going to be a bit Hamilton 2008-ish. So yeah, I'm thinking Max is going to get pole, really ramp it up for the excitement on Sunday. And I think Max is going to win. I think Oscar will get second, and I'm going to go Mercedes on the podium. Let's put Russell on the podium. And I think, Norris will be back in the pack. I think he's going to be the Mr. Conservative this weekend, and that's where it's going to come down to it. And that's where I think Max will win it. I think Oscar will just drive solid and do what he can do. He'll be a bit, Webberish in 2010 and just kind of do what he can without really being a full challenge. So, bold prediction. Lance Stroll will finish in 4th.
I said bold prediction, not a ridiculous prediction.
Get in there, Lancey boy. He can do it. He'll do it.
But yeah, so I mean, okay, that's kind of stumped me a bit. Right, my predictions. I'm going all out. Pole position, Max. Podium, Max first. Oscar second. George Russell third. My bold prediction: Red Bull overtake Mercedes in the constructors.
Oh, okay.
I am full copium this weekend.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, so that's my bold prediction.
Go ahead and say Yuki will win and somehow save he'll lap the field, and he'll basically middle finger off to Red Bull.
Yeah,
go off into the mist.
Yeah, well, yeah. So somebody tells me that if he was even in with a sniff of a win, Red Bull would say, "Come on, sunshine, out the way." You know, so yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't foresee that happening. I think we'd be more likely to see him being lapped as opposed to him being in the lead, unfortunately. But
Poor Yuki.
yes, poor Yuki indeed. But just to wrap everything up, so our usual outro, Grid Talk is available on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal and Pocket Cast. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows of previews and reactions to race results. A big thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support the show further, why not sign up to our Patreon for exclusive content? As always, just before we go, I want to say a big thank you to both Jawad and Ben for joining us. So, Jawad, you are a co-host here now at Grid Talk. You have been officially promoted, so congratulations. Welcome to the Inner Sanctuary. You write for theraw.com or .au, sorry, with our good friend Ben here, who will come to in a second. Do you just want to give us a quick plug for something?
Yeah, you can find my F1 Live blogs and articles for supercars as well on theraw.com.au. It's how I met my good friend Ben here, who has moved on to bigger and better things. But I quickly want to also shout out the driver ratings show as well that you and I do, Tom, which will be delving into a bit more detail of how each driver fared over the Qatar weekend. And then, yeah, of course, looking ahead to the Abu Dhabi final.
Absolutely. It should be a good one. Now, Ben, first of all, once again, thank you so much for coming on. It genuinely has been really good to have you on. I mentioned you are the lone Lance Stroll fan out there, so my condolences. But I also mentioned you're the F1 editor of Speed Cafe, and you also do stuff with Jawad at theraw.com. So do you just want to give us a quick promo for things for yourself?
Yeah, speedcafe.com. As you said, that's who I write for. I'll actually be in Abu Dhabi this weekend, so hopefully producing some good content out there for our readers and everybody out there. So, yeah, check it out. And if you're a general fan of motorsport as well, other great content on there too. Lots of supercar stuff for Australia, of course, and other international series out there as well. So, yeah, check it out. And I appreciate the invite, Tom, and congratulations, Jawad, on your promotion. You're on to bigger and better things too now, my friend. Done.
We're moving up in the world, mate.
Do you get a golden microphone? Is that kind of what you get in the next level, or how does it work? What happens?
You going to hook me up?
No, if I'm going to put it bluntly, yes, absolutely. So, yes. So, with all that said, please make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty more fun content as this incredible season comes to a close. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast presented by Green Wheels, and goodbye.